I am Vinnie Tortorich. Folks, your good intentions have been stolen, but don't worry. I'm here to help you get them back. You may be soft and succulent when we start this process, but hang in there. Before long, you will be lean and mean. That's a guarantee. Folks, I got to tell you, I get pretty excited about getting guests on this Friday show, but this guy, I'm looking forward to because I got questions and I need answers. I need a lot of answers. I was in the grocery store yesterday and I realized I need more answers than I ever thought I needed before. I'm talking about Dr. Gregory Martin. Let me give you a little background of this guy. Gregory is registered in 3 separate categories of professional animal science. That's PAS is what they call it over there. And he knows a lot about poultry. And we were talking a little bit off the air. This guy's been studying birds since 1977 or 78. He will tell us. And I'm also interested in knowing the 3 different segments and categories of animal, I guess it's animal husbandry that he probably deals with. Folks, without any further ado, and I've been waiting for 5 minutes to say this. I got on the other mic, Doc Martin. All right.
Doc Martin. Yeah, just like the shoe, it's easy to remember.
The way, there's a show also. Did you know about the TV show Doc Martin?
Yes. Oh, I'm a big fan. Oh yeah. Can't stand the sight of blood. Now go through being a doctor and not it was funny.
Yeah, my wife is British, and I was watching it not to watch him, but to watch the hottie wife that it's like, how did this guy get a hot wife?
I know.
It makes no sense, right?
I know. And the things that have happened to that sweet dear girl is just crazy. She got hit by a car. Some neighbor decided to steal their child and was holed up in a tower somewhere. And and then
so you know the show inside and out. It's a great
and then putting up with old Doc Martin, who just he's like House and MacGyver all put into one, type of thing, So yeah, it's a great show, and it's fun to watch. I'm glad I'm not a doctor in that little sleepy seaside town.
I tell them, we watch a lot of British television because my wife is British, and I always say to her, there's a lot of murder in small towns in Britain. Apparently, everything is like every week there's a murder in a small town somewhere in England.
That's right.
Makes no sense.
And they seem to go back in time in the blink of an eye.
oh, absolutely. Now, it's funny. I didn't mean to bring up England, but here's my first question. Let's qualify you just a little bit.
Sure.
You seem to know a lot about animal husbandry and the PAS, and you have 3 separate categories. Can you explain what those categories are?
So I'm a professional animal scientist by the American Registry of Professional Animal Scientists, ARPS. And it's basically like a nursing certification. You go through school and all that, but then you sit for boards. And so I sat for boards for 3 different categories, being poultry, which includes poultry management, poultry husbandry, and all that. Then poultry processing and foods. So basically we take whatever the birds give us and we make food out of that, right? So I know everything about making hot dogs to chicken McNuggets, secret recipe. And then the last one was welfare, animal welfare. So I'm certified with ARPS as an animal welfarist. And I have an additional certification from another entity on animal welfare as well. So we can talk just about anything that has feathers or eggs. We can talk about that. I even in graduate school studied incubation with ostriches. Now that's the only bird I am totally scared of. 300 pounds moving 30 miles an hour at you, and you have nothing but a stick to protect yourself. So yes,
yeah,
the eggs were a lot more easier to handle than the birds.
That's as close to a dinosaur as you're going to get, right?
Absolutely. And it's because of their linked to the prehistoric age has allowed them to survive on just about anything they can find. They're the goat of the bird family, basically.
So the Tom Brady of all birds is what we're
I'm not
talking
going to
about.
go down that road.
I mean, if they're going to get laid as
Yeah, they're there.
it would be the Giselle Bundchen of birds. They were, look, I've always said I grew up in southern Louisiana next to the only dinosaurs left, which was the alligator. But I
Right.
mean, we can look at the bird and say the same thing, right?
The cool thing about birds is that they're the bridge between true mammals and true reptiles. So they're warm-blooded, and yet they have scales like a lizard, or a
Yeah.
snake. They have, a single digestive system just like we do, and yet they're laying eggs like a reptile. So they're that kind of bridge in between both of those, and they go back for centuries. They look at fossilized birds from a long time ago. Archaeopteryx is the first one, and it's very famous. It was between two pieces of shale that they were looking through, and here's this perfect imprint of a lizard that had feathers. So that's where that came from.
Well,
So
I'm always, my degree is in exercise physiology, so I'm a dumbo.
I'm a physiologist as well, veterinary physiologist.
So you get it, and so you're going to understand what I'm talking about here. I remember I've been to the Smithsonian because I'm a nerd. I don't know, half dozen times, maybe more, and I always save the one with the dinosaurs, with the bones for last, right?
Yeah.
And I will stand in front of any one of those dinosaurs and study them for hours. The last time I stood and studied anything for hours was when I was at the Uffizi, and I sat with David for probably 3 hours and just slowly walked around David and then did a second lap and a third lap. And because I have to take it all in and visually. And the one thing that I always come away whenever I leave the Smithsonian is we're looking at prehistoric animals. And when you see, the condyles and the ulnas and radiuses and everything in their limbs, you're looking at that going, wow, that's exactly like humans. And when I say exactly, there is no difference, right? Whatever created those animals, it's in us, because there is no difference. What say you? Am I the only person that looks at this and goes, wow, look at that ulna and radius, and look at the condyles, and look at the way the tendons and everything must have connected on that animal? Or
yes, very similar in that, but there are some differences that are slight. The neat thing about birds is that they have what we call pneumatic bones. There's no heavy marrow in there, and that allows them to actually fly. And then there's fused bones. So if you think about your hand, you have a thumb and 4 fingers. Well, in a chicken, those are fused, and there's just a little bit of a thumb left. And that allows them to give them the power at their wingtip to hang those primaries, and allows the birds to fly. And even the vertebra, to economize on, it's either the way they developed or what have you through centuries. They actually have one occipital condyle at the base of their neck. We have 2.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
So it's called the Atlas joint. Oh, it's a cool conversational thing. It's usually when I say that, somebody takes a drink and walks away. So the other thing that's cool about birds too, especially chickens, is that they have a bone in their eye that maintains the shape of the eyeball. So there's no astigmatism, no nearsightedness in birds. They have that eyeball fixed at one focal point all the way through life.
Interesting. And look, I've always said the only thing that separates us from other apes is the fact that we have a bone that keeps our neck in pain, so it doesn't go back and forth. And we have an Achilles tendon.
Yeah.
So we're able to run upright. If you notice, they can kind of walk upright, but when they want to sprint, they got to get down on all fours.
They got to get down on all fours. Yeah. But their muscle to bone weight allows them to rip a tree apart where we can barely get up the tree. So there's some good things and bad things in each of our species. So it's been an amazing journey learning about birds. I still watch birds. They still fascinate me.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated with birds. And, look, I'm a guy who's bird hunted my entire life. So we're going to get into that just a little bit. But
Me
I
too.
want, I want to go back to the UK for just a second.
Sure.
And we're going to start it off right here with the egg. Not what came first, the chicken or the egg, and I kind of know the answer to this, but I want you to give me exactly the answer. So when I grew up in Southern Louisiana, when we went to the store and bought eggs, they were in the fridge, in the refrigeration section. As soon as we got home, my mom would go, get those eggs in the fridge. But if the woman down the street brought us eggs, they weren't cold and they sat on the counter, usually with a couple of feathers on them here and there, but they sat on the counter. We didn't have to refrigerate them. When we go to England, they're not in the refrigeration section. And when we bring them back to the house, they're not refrigerated. Explain why we have these rules where we refrigerate here, don't refrigerate there. The lady down the street, when I grew up, there was no refrigeration. Where are we on that?
So there's a 2-word answer for that, and the answer is Salmonella enteritidis. And it's a bacteria that we found in eggs in birds. And we found that by refrigerating those eggs, we were able to reduce the growth of salmonella in those eggs. And so to cut it short, there is an egg law now in the United States that requires flocks that are 3,000 birds or more to process their eggs a little bit differently and to keep them refrigerated. When I first started working on the poultry farm that I worked at commercially, we were able to move eggs around unrefrigerated out there. They sat out in the middle of the produce aisle, basically in a stand. You helped yourself. The eggs were sitting there. We rotated those eggs every 3 days to make sure that the oldest eggs were being sold out. And we washed those eggs so that we reduced the amount of bacteria load that was on those eggs. But certainly a backyard enthusiast right now that's, they're totally able to, sell eggs at the end of the farm, and, they're hot eggs, basically. Your eggs will keep longer and in better condition under refrigeration. Years ago, commercial eggs were produced on a seasonal basis like apples, and they would pack these eggs in sawdust and put them away in refrigeration warehouses, and they would sit for six months at a time under refrigeration. Now, did some eggs go bad? Well, yeah, just like a bad apple in a barrel. Every now and then you would see those things. And so, but we found that by washing and refrigerating and candling the egg, these eggs were just as clean as could be, and they held up for a long, long time. So under refrigeration, your eggs could sit in your refrigerator for a month, say, and still be, that's still a wholesome product. It may not make a good angel food cake by the end of 4 weeks, but they're still good to eat and they'll still hold up. So in Europe, different orientation. So you can, what was the size of the cartons you saw in Europe?
Oh, there would be 4 eggs in the carton. Sometimes.
4 eggs in a carton. Okay. Yeah. So it's a different mindset in the UK. They pretty much go and shop, take home what they buy and cook it immediately. Right. Because of that, they can go with these unrefrigerated eggs because they're not saving them. What do? We go to Costco, we buy a bale of eggs, basically. Right. And so, yeah, since you're taking all those eggs home and you're not going to eat more than 2 a day, so you've got a week's worth of eggs there. Yeah, it's going to work better for you to put them in the refrigerator just to keep them safe.
Let's finish up on the salmonella conversation. I've given myself salmonella twice in my life. Once in college when the raw chicken sat in the fridge, maybe a day too long, and about 8 hours later, I was well aware. And it was coming out of both ends. Folks, you don't want salmonella.
You don't want this not even your worst friend. You don't want this. I've had it too.
It's coming out of both ends. Yes. You're in the bathroom and you better have a bucket because it's projectiling out of both ends. Your body wants to get rid of this bacteria
And that's the typical way it does it. Yeah.
The only other time I gave it to myself was, this is why I don't recommend it on this podcast. I'm an old schooler. When I always say I got a D1 scholarship to play football based on the amount of eggs I ate and still do eat.
Yeah.
The only way to consume that many eggs is obviously to put them in a blender, whiz them up, because they taste better when they're frothy. And I would just drink them down. Well, if you get any shell in there, that's where you could get the salmonella. And you're over there shaking your head at me.
No. It can be inside the egg itself. So there's something called vertical transmission where you've got the bird, and the egg, right? And so the bird gets infected inside with salmonella, and then every egg she lays has it inside the egg. So not only can you get it from the surface, but you can also get it from the chicken doing it vertically by laying the eggs that has it inside the egg. And so what we're doing with this egg program is that we're testing the birds as pullets, as young birds, just to see if they have salmonella in their system. If they have salmonella in their system, then those eggs that they have will go then to a processing plant. They'll be cooked and used as mayonnaise or something else other than a raw product. And that detail is what has reduced the amount of salmonella that we've seen in eggs dramatically.
I was about
25 years ago, we may have seen maybe 5%. And now it's down to decimals of a percentage. It's very, very low. It's very rare. The other part of your question, though, you're eating raw egg, and that's a problem. And the reason why is that an egg has materials in it that will hold up your biotin, avidin. There's avidin in the eggs, and that restricts biotin in your system. So you're actually doing yourself more problematic problems by drinking that raw egg. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of eggs, but cook them first. So even if you take all those eggs that you drink frothing, throw them in the pan, eat them as an omelet, do something else with them, eat them as hard cooked eggs. Having a couple of hard cooked eggs in the refrigerator, and if you're running behind, they're better than Pop-Tarts. They're better for you. So yeah.
Let me explain something to you here, Doc Martin. And look, I change at the drop of a hat on things, right? I had an expert tell me never drink water from plastic again. I've had this bottle. You can see how banged up it is. You got plastic.
I got plastic. Nalgene.
Matter of fact, all right, Nalgene.
BPA. No BPA. It says right on the jar.
Can I tell you something? Look on the bottom inside that little triangle. It's going to have a 6 or a 7.
It has now you're making me look. All right. It is a 7.
Throw it away. They're lying to you. Throw it away. Don't use that again. I had a Nalgene sitting on my desk when I had Dr. Anthony J on the first time. And I said, yeah, no, look, this is Nalgene. I've been, a camper and all that for years. And he goes, what number's on the bottom? I said 7. And he goes, throw it away. I went out the next day. You can see how banged up this bottle is.
Oh, absolutely. I've got plenty of those.
You start using this. You use stainless steel or glass. Do not ever. I'm teaching the teacher something, folks. I'm teaching the teacher. They all have it. Look, he's throwing it away. I'm watching him do it.
I'm looking to see if I have where my steel is. I also have steel. I have a Yeti that I use too.
Use that. All right. So,
but plastic is innocuous. I mean, it is everywhere. So yeah.
Not in my house. Not in my house. So let me tell you something. I've had more raw eggs than any human being alive. I'm pretty convinced of that because Vince Gironda is dead now. So I have to be leading the raw egg push. From what you just told me, I will never eat another raw egg in my life.
Avidin, yeah. And I worry about kids even eating raw eggs and cookie dough and all this kind of stuff. It just wait till it's cooked. And it will be perfectly fine. I was surprised to hear about this avidin too, but there's like several different markers in those eggs that just, they're antibacterial, and that's one of them. And it helps break up the biotin of the bacteria to help keep the egg from getting contaminated. Because you got to remember, what's an egg? It's an RV for a chicken.
Yeah.
So, Everything that the
embryo.
chicken needs is right there. So the yolk is the energy component. The white or albumin is the protein component. And both of those is what makes up that chick. And then where's the calcium? Well, the calcium is degraded from the shell. So everything is in there for that chick. So that's why it's nature's perfect food for us to eat, because everything is in there. There's almost every essential amino acid in this egg for 70 calories. I mean, it's
Doc, I've been saying that
high,
for years. Every amino acid we've ever discovered is inside of an egg.
and the only vitamin that's not there is vitamin C, because hens can make up their own vitamin C. So that's the only thing that's missing, really. So, I mean, for 70 calories, and it's a good bang for your buck on price, even at $6 a dozen, unfortunately.
Hey, yeah, and we're going to get into that in just a minute. But
Yeah.
look, I mean, you just gave me brand new information. I've been doing this since I'm 12. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
Because, I eat so many eggs and I'm like, oh God. And what I started doing after I gave myself salmonella is I would crack them into a bowl so that I can fish out any of the shells.
Right.
Any shell that I get caught, I just pull it out right away.
Right.
And I thought that's why I never gave myself salmonella. But you're telling me it's a 0.00 blah blah blah.
Yeah. It's decimals now. Thankfully, because we figured out how was it getting into the egg.
Folks, if we learn nothing else from this podcast right here, between 18 minutes and 21 minutes, this is the price of admission. Now, I get it. You guys get it for free, but okay. This is the price of admission on this podcast.
Yeah.
So, thank you for that.
You're welcome. So, I blame two people for the misuse of eggs. Rocky Balboa, because he chugged eggs on Rocky, on the original.
Oh yeah.
And Martha Stewart.
Really? What does she do?
I love Martha Stewart. I have her cookbook.
I find her sexy, even at her advanced age. I find her very.
Oh my! And why she is pushing kitty litter is beyond my imagination. Don't understand that, but we're moving on. So she tends to keep her eggs on the counter in a big bowl. That's the one thing I have problems with. But then she tends to undercook her eggs, and so I'm looking at. She's making really runny eggs and dippy. She calls them dippy eggs. Well, friends, they are just about as rare an egg you can find. Even the yolk, I mean, the whites are not even set on some of these eggs that she's cooking, and they're zooming in, and I'm going, oh my gosh, what is this woman doing? And the third thing too is that if you look at most recipes, they're standardized to a large egg. And so when she's jumping and she's pulling out eggs, I've been grading eggs so long, I can see that, oh, she pulled out a medium. Oh, there's an extra large. Oh, there's a jumbo. She's throwing off the leavening ratio on some of these baked goods. And so, of course, they're going to look fantastic. But when you try them at home, you're going to be cussing her out because the cake fell or what have you. You didn't have enough there. So, yeah, it's those cookbooks are standardized to a large egg. Take a look in the front of the book and it'll tell you what they're standardized to. So.
Okay, now you just blew my mind again, because I'm the king of the sloppy egg. I make eggs every which way. I boil them, hard boil, soft boiled.
They're great.
And I do the sloppy egg. I call it the in the pan scramble. So what I do is I put a lot of butter, and then I just break them so they look like I'm going to go over easy. And after the albumin starts turning white all the way around, I take my spatula and I break them up a little bit so that I could get all of the butter mixed in with the egg.
You're okay. That's what I call a poor man's omelet. You're doing fine.
Yeah, I call it my sloppy eggs, and I get
as long as it heats all the way through. That's the key part, heating it all the way through. So she was poaching eggs, and boy, they were just gelatinous ooze. But she has more followers than I do, so I'm gonna, it works for her.
All right, so look, we're learning, folks. You got to cook your eggs, and all right, so now I'm going to ask the $1 million question. Hey guys, wanted to just break into the show and let you know right now at purevitaminclub.com, you can save 20% on your next order through the month of February. Even if you're getting a new subscription, 20% off. It's a one-time deal. Promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, will save you 20%. Promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, no wimpy Y, 20% off right now at purevitaminclub.com. Now back to the show.
Sure.
Get ready. And I'm going to tell you this. If you go to Twitter or if you go to Instagram and you want to get the biggest conversation in the world started, all you have to do is say one of two things. One thing is you could say that Tom Brady's not the GOAT, and that would get a conversation
Oh
going.
my gosh.
Or
it'll burn up the Twitter.
It would burn it up. Or the other thing you can say is, how do I make a hard-boiled egg where the shell comes off easily? And you will
Yes.
if there are 10,000 responses, there's one. Why is it sometimes they stick to that myelin sheath or whatever in the hell that malleable thing is underneath, and other times they break away? What is that? I need the answer right now.
So it goes back to physiology. Okay. So in an egg, there's actually two membranes that the egg is famous for. One is called the inner shell membrane. The other is the outer shell membrane. The outer shell membrane is what the shell, the calcium starts to grow against as the egg's being formed. So the egg sits in the oviduct for the longest time in what they call the shell gland, or the ovary of the egg, of the hen. And so all this calcium, there's 2 grams of calcium that goes around an average large egg, and it grows and it forms this hard structure. Underneath it is another membrane that allows air to pass through, but not allow water or allow the proteins to go ooze out of the egg.
So it's like Gore-Tex.
That's the inner shell membrane, right? At the large end of the egg, as the egg loses water vapor, it forms what we call an air cell. The fresher the egg, the tighter everything is. And so in order to have perfectly cooked, hard cooked eggs, you need to allow those eggs to age, and you can use a flashlight and kindle the egg and allow them time to develop this air cell. So older eggs actually cook better than newer eggs, because I've seen chefs, I've almost had a chef throw eggs at me because he says these things don't peel worth a flip. I said, how old are they? Well, you brought them to me 2 days ago. Well, I can tell you they were laid the day before, so they were actually only 3 days old. You're going to need eggs that are at least 7 to 10 days of age in order for them to peel well. And this is something that all the producers have problems with all along. So they have to make sure they know exactly how old those eggs are before they go ahead and boil them for products that need hard-boiled eggs.
Okay, so all right, now you just,
the other thing too is, how do you boil them? So you want to go cold water. There's actually a video on YouTube from the egg board on this.
Okay.
But you want to start with cold water. You put the eggs in a single layer on your pan. You put here's the key part. This is very scientific. You take your finger and you put it on top of the egg. You should have enough water to cover your knuckle, your first knuckle. That means you have enough water. So you take them up from cold to a rolling boil, right?
Okay.
And then you cover them, take them off the heat, and allow that boiling water to continue cooking the eggs between 12 to 13 minutes. Check, over time, you'll know exactly how many minutes you need to cook
you
your
take
eggs.
them completely off the heat, and you
Take
just
them off the heat.
You let 212 go down to maybe 170 by the time, 160 by the time.
And they continue to cook. Yes.
Wow.
That's the trick. Now, the reason.
And then, all right, folks, let me just make sure I have this right. I cold water in the pot, 1 knuckle on top. You want it to be covered. Bring it to a roaring boil. As soon as you have a roaring boil.
A rolling boil. Yeah.
Yeah, rolling boil. You cut it off completely and just let them sit for 12 to 15.
Covered.
Yeah,
covered.
I'm doing that tomorrow. Who knew I was going to learn all this tonight on this podcast?
Oh yeah. The egg. I'll send you the link to the video so you can watch it. Okay. And then here's the other cool thing about this is then, okay, 12 minutes are gone. you drain off the water, and you immediately take those eggs and you pour cold water on them. And I even put a couple of a layer of egg or ice on them. That immediately shrinks it gives the cold shock to the shell and breaks up that calcium a little bit, so that after those eggs have cooled, I can break them out and roll them around and get that loose, and I can just peel that shell right off.
Okay.
So why off the stove? Well, between the yolk, there's a yolk and the white, there's another membrane called the vitelline membrane, and it has a lot of sulfur content to it. If you cook the eggs too hard or too hot, that breaks apart those sulfur bonds and it leaves a green ring all the way around the yolk. So the way I suggest it, you're going to get a perfectly cooked egg without that green ring around the egg. So if you're doing deviled eggs, for example, you don't have this green stuff all over the egg yolks. So works out really well.
Yeah, I never get that on my eggs because my method, I like the yolk to not be super hard. So
right.
at about
so you may be
minutes,
11 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you have.
Well,
so
what I would do is I would just boil them, which was the wrong thing to do. And right at 7 or 8 minutes, I would pull, because my wife likes them the other way. I would pull a couple out and just put them on the counter and let them continue to cook as they're cooling off.
Yeah.
I never get any of that green stuff, but I've seen it like on Easter eggs, rookies that don't know what they're doing with the Easter eggs and what have you.
Sure.
And okay, so I've learned how to properly boil an egg. What I'm going to do is start separating my eggs. So when I bring some new eggs into the house, there's going to be the frying eggs. And on the bottom, I'm going to put the 10 to 12 day eggs is what I'm going to call them. But here's my question to you. When I walk into Harris Teat, or the Teat, as we like to call it, because it's feeding us.
Yeah.
I walk into the Teat. I buy some eggs.
Sure.
Right. How long has that, I've always wondered this. How long has that egg been out of a chicken by the time I purchase it?
We've actually had a study that we took eggs. We bought eggs from different stores throughout the Northeast. And it's funny because they would buy eggs and they would go from store to store to store and buy the eggs. And they laid them out on the bed in the hotel, and they did all these quality checks. So you can usually see on the carton a Julian date. So a Julian date, just basically the first day, January 1st, is day 1. The last day is 365 of the year, and you can tell when those eggs were being processed. So the end of the carton gives you kind of a clue, but in most cases, I would say those eggs are between 3 to 7 days of age at the most. It depends on where their supplier is. Here in Pennsylvania, I can drive within 2.5 minutes and find eggs, the egg producers that are actually packing the eggs. So my eggs are only about 3 days old at the most.
So if I bring home eggs from the Teat and I put them on my bottom shelf, I should give them another at least 5 days before I'm boiling them.
Right. And so, the cool thing is you got a handy little lie detector that tells you how old those eggs are at any given time. And it's called a flashlight.
All right. How do I use a flashlight? What do I do? So
you take your flashlight and you put it on the egg like this. So you see what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm.
And this is what we call candling. And on the large end of the egg, you'll actually see the air cell as a shadow on the top of the egg. That tells you how fresh that egg really is. We call it candling. So if it's the size of a dime or less, it's actually a grade AA egg. Not the best for boiling, but perfect for eggs that, fresh eggs like over easy eggs or a angel food cake. As that egg loses water, that air cell gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So you want it about the size of a penny, maybe, for boiling. But this is your truth detector. Every now and then my wife will go, okay, we're going to boil some eggs, and I'll bring out my flashlight. And I said, okay, here's my oldest 6 eggs. Let's do those.
Wow. Who knew? Okay. So
just try it at home. The other thing you can do,
I will.
As you're breaking out eggs, as you break out the eggs, look in the large end and you'll see that air cell from the inside, and you can see what that looks like.
Yeah. And, I've always wondered about that. It's like, even when you boil them, you see the gap and you see how much gap is there and everything else.
Yeah, you should have a little flat spot on each of your boiled eggs.
Yolk color.
Yes.
I'm now here's the deal. All the eggs I buy seem to have really dark yellowy, whether I get them from a friend down the street or I get them from the store, they always have a really dark yellow, sometimes very orange. And I was down in Louisiana and I got some eggs at the Walmart, because that's where in these small towns, Walmart's taken over, and that's the only grocery store.
Right.
So got these eggs. The shell was very thin. I noticed that when I cracked them, it's like, oh my God, I'm glad I didn't handle these too much. You would have broken in my hand.
Yeah, from an older hen.
And okay, that's what that was. And the yolk was almost, just almost white. It was beige.
Yeah, we call those platinum whites. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that? And am I eating a less nutritious egg?
The short answer is no, you're not eating a less nutritious egg. So the color of the egg yolk is based upon the diet that the hen's receiving. I can make an egg go from almost pure white to almost pure orange, depending on what we call carotenoids I feed the hen. And so I can do that in various ways. I can feed alfalfa meal, for example, to a hen, and that will brighten up that yolk very quickly. But it has no difference on the nutrition of the egg at all. So all the good stuff is still there. It just looks different. And, in a restaurant, that does make a difference. You don't want a white egg and an orange egg next to each other. You want them all the same color, all the same size, in fact. And so, yeah. So a lot of restaurateurs, for example, years ago used to sell medium eggs in their restaurant because they only had a 9-inch plate. And those eggs were perfect. They were the first eggs of that flock. And so they had really high yolks, very compact albumin. They look beautiful on those dishes. So you can alter that color with the amount of carotenoids that you're feeding, plant-based pigments that go into those eggs. And it passes from whatever the hen ate to whatever you give that. So if you're feeding Milo, for example, and less corn, you're going to see whiter eggs. Or if you're feeding wheat to your chickens, you're going to see lighter yolks than you will if you're feeding them corn. So in Louisiana, a lot of sorghum is raised down there because it's hot.
Yeah, so it's just easier to feed. It's
easier.
That would make sense.
It's actually cheaper too.
I was doing Dr. Drew and Adam Carolla's podcast a few months ago, and I do their shows quite often. And Adam asked, in the presence of Dr. Drew, he said, Vinnie, if you had to pick one food to eat for the next month, and you can only eat that food and water, what would it be? And without hesitation, I said, the chicken egg. And he looked at Drew, and Drew said, yeah, I concur, and he said, well, why would you pick the chicken egg? And it's exactly what we said earlier. It's got every nutrient that, it's an embryo. It's got every nutrient. It's got every amino acid that we've ever discovered. It's got fat. It's got protein. It's quite honestly probably the perfect food.
It's concentrated. Yeah, they say it's next to mother's milk. And so it's very easily moved around. In fact, there's a program in Africa that they are trying to give what they call an egg a day. If you can Google that, an egg a day. And it's basically to feed school-aged children who may not have enough to eat at home, at least an egg a day, so that they can keep their minds open and that they can keep learning. So because, a hungry mind is going to be a foggy mind. And so they're handing eggs to every child as they're coming into school so that they have something of a decent nutrition plane. And the school lunch program here in the United States has basically done the same thing, if you think about it. And that level of nutrition has helped all of those students stay awake, stay able to learn something. And I think that's important. Yeah, it's a good investment, I think.
You might want to stay away from Dr. Greger's How Not to Die, because he will tell you that eating even one egg per week, not per day, one egg per week, will cause type 2 diabetes. And he also said that if you eat 2, it will double that.
Okay.
Yeah. So you might want to stay away from Dr. Michael Greger when it comes to that. It's good to know that other
Well,
countries.
the other part of it, and here's the physiology part of it, animal proteins are highly digestible because they're similar to our own tissues. And so I always advocate the idea of a balanced diet. Enough of our vegetable friends as well as our animal friends to balance that out. I have a glass of milk with my meal every evening, and I'll tell you what, I think I have a fairly balanced diet.
Yeah, people ask me, well, how many eggs do you eat per day? And I always say, I don't know, but it's never less than four, and most days is between 6 and 8. And
Wow.
they go, aren't you worried about cholesterol? I was like, I have a calcium score of 0 and I'm 60. What am I worried about?
Right.
You tell me. You know,
Cholesterol has more to do with genetics than it does with diet. And we have seen this, 30, 40 years ago, high cholesterol was being associated with egg consumption. And then they changed the way they measure cholesterol in eggs. And so surprisingly, the number dropped.
yeah.
And so now the Heart Association and some of the other larger associations are saying, yes, an egg a day is okay in moderation. You have to work with your physician because there are truly people that are highly susceptible to high cholesterol. And so anything that they're eating in addition to what their body's making in cholesterol, then it can be effective. But for most people, the egg, your dietary cholesterol is not going to be truly affecting whatever you're having in your body, because your body's making cholesterol for nerve functions, for other things
Sure.
physiologically. And so you need a little bit of cholesterol in your diet. And so it's always good to know what your number is, and that will tell you which direction you need to go. So
But also,
if you're a walker, you probably have a blood pressure that's very low, heart rate that's in the 60s, and you rarely get sick.
they've now proven that high cholesterol has nothing to do with heart disease. Yeah,
Right.
there are people who are hyper responders. I've had every expert in the world on this show talk about that.
Yeah.
And we really need to come around on what cholesterol is. I mean, a low cholesterol in your body has more to do with contracting any sort of cancer and all cause mortality than high cholesterol. But nobody wants to talk about that.
No. Yeah,
Let's
you need to know the numbers. That's the best thing. And always work with your nutritionist or physician as to what's the best course for that. Because there's many ways around this.
Oh, absolutely. One thing that comes up, we hear it all the time. I hear it from vegans more than anything else. They talk about factory farming.
Right.
The factory farm. And then, whenever they want to show you how bad things are, they'll show. And I've seen some of the same videos. I saw the same videos back in the 80s that they're still pushing today. So apparently they can't come up with new videos because this seems to be not the norm. Explain factory farming. Explain why it's good or bad.
So I don't call it factory farming, first of all. And I find it ironic that these people are condemning the way food is produced, and yet they say that it's coming out of a factory, and yet every consumer item they buy comes out of a factory. I've seen a diaper plant that was the size of a city block. All they made was Pampers. I've seen cars made. Cars are made in what? A factory.
Right.
Bread made in a factory. There's a lot of things we eat, a lot of drugs we make. What is it made in? I've seen flu vaccine made. Where was it made? In a factory. And so you think about tires, you think about even electricity comes from what? An electric factory, right? So why not allow a farmer to work with economies of scale, because he's working with a commodity that has a very small margin of profit. So the only way he's going to make money is to produce more of them. And so that's why we have moved to larger and larger farms, because of this economy of scale. So yes, you either stay as a small farm with 300 chickens and you're just doing all the work, or you get big. And so you can have employees that you'll make enough production to pay for their salaries, to pay for their insurance, to pay for their livelihood, and support everybody and feed everyone else. Only 2% of our US population is involved in farming. 2%. So 2% is feeding the 98% of them, even the
crazy.
vegans, right?
Yeah.
So it is a large farm that's doing that. The average farmer is feeding over 100 people. And so, it's that economy of scale is that we're looking at. So how did this come about? So the idea of the larger farms came about because of World War II. What happened during World War II? Who went to war?
Well, we did. Germany went to war.
No. Think about the family unit. Who went to war?
Oh, the men and the women went and worked in the factories.
The men went to war. So who was the traditional farmer on the farm?
The woman and the
men. The men were, right?
Oh, you
And
mean
they got
before
called
they went
off to war. Yeah.
Okay. I see
So
what you're getting at.
it left fewer people on the farm, and so that women had to start farming. In fact, I have historical videos of women going out into the fields and they're working. There was Rosie Riveter out on the farm.
Sure.
Same idea. And so the other thing that happened at the same time was this great demand for food to send to the troops overseas. So the sea rations, those sea rations were cans of food that they had to package and send. So they were drying eggs. You've heard of powdered eggs. Everybody hated them. Well, they were there, and it was a food source that was easily transported. And so all these eggs had to be transferred. So what was more efficient? Go to one farm and pick up thousands of dozens of eggs at a clip, or to go to 1,000 farms and pick up 50 eggs?
Right.
So this is why this
Yeah.
idea of the economies of scale has grown. And so I even would suggest to those who are vegans, unless they're buying their produce and other plant-based things off the farm directly, and they know what they're buying, and there's some people that do that truly, then you are also ascribing to the idea of economies of scale, and all those things are coming to you via truck to your local grocery store. So yes, yeah, there are decisions out there, and that's truly the cool thing about America is you get to choose what you want to eat.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly fine with folks that want to eat a certain way. It's both an ethnic decision for some people. Sometimes it's a religious decision, and sometimes it's a matter of choice that they want to eat this way. So the Mediterranean diet, for example, is a certain set of foods that people eat because that's what they want to eat. And if they live from the Mediterranean culture, like I have, my heritage is from that region, we eat a certain amount of stuff. I eat more fish probably than the average person, but that's because that's what I grew up with. So, it is what it is. So I'm not going to poo-poo anybody on what they choose to eat. It's them. But my choice is I try to go for the most efficient, cost-effective food that I can get. So I go to the grocery store and I buy eggs.
Yeah, look, I'm the same way.
Yeah.
And by the way, when you talk about the vegans and what have you,
Yeah.
They're always, they're always down on me, and I would say, well, look, you guys, you talk about factory farming and the poor chickens and this and that, and I was like, but what about pheasant hunting? Because I like pheasant hunting, and
sure, game hunting, eating game. Yeah.
So I'll say to them, these animals are not living in a factory.
Nope.
As a matter of fact, they seed the fields. They feed these animals for a whole year. And then guys like me go with a gun. There's people working the dogs. They're getting paid. They're beaters. They're getting paid. The people who cook the meals for us at wherever we are, they're getting paid.
Right.
And these birds have lived a perfectly great life. They were fed for a whole year.
Yeah.
And that life continues until all of a sudden a shotgun goes off and their life is over with. They didn't even see it coming.
Right.
And I was telling this to a vegan. I said, so that's the best way to get meat, right? Because it was free range as that animal could be until my shotgun pellets actually went through it. And they'll say, yes, but the problem there is you were enjoying yourself. And it's like, well, okay, so I'll never win this conversation. Right.
So we want to be miserable our entire lives because of what we eat. Well,
Because I enjoyed myself,
yeah,
harvesting my own animal and
right.
then bringing it home and eating my own. But it's still bad because I enjoyed myself because I killed it, and I enjoyed myself because I got a
Yeah.
nutritious meal. So you're telling me there's no winning here. So I guess we
Yeah.
can.
I think we're going to agree to disagree. I think that's the way we're going to leave it. But
Yeah.
I lived on a farm for 23 years before I went on to college. And, we used to home harvest our own beef. And so that meant somebody with a name was going to go down that day, and
Right.
it filled up the freezer, and we ate every part of that animal. And so most animal scientists of good repute roll on two major principles, and I think that's important to talk about right now. The two principles are dominion and stewardship. These are two basic religious fundamentals, but if you think about our Judeo-Christian founding of our nation, we kind of go back to some of these principles every now and then that we use for law. And so the first one is dominion. That means that we have charge over the plants and animals in our world that we select and use for food. So whether I'm putting out Brussels sprouts or beef, we have dominion because those plants and animals were designated as food from the get-go. So we're not going to put a chicken on the ground, for example, unless we know we have a market for it. That's what we do in the
Right.
commercial industry. We have the market already figured out. Then we put the birds down. We don't do it on speculation. So every bird has a purpose, right?
Right.
The second thing is stewardship, which means that things that are given to us and are in our possession, we need to take care of. So whether it's birds, pets, children, those things all need to be taken care of to the best of our ability. And that's what welfare means, at least animal welfare in our respect. So we try to put the best environment forward for those animals to thrive. And the first thing that we lose if we don't have good animal welfare in the house is the things that are productive. So they'll either lose weight. If it's a chicken and they're losing weight, well, that's not going to help us. Or if they lose egg production, which can drop dramatically if they're being stressed, that hurts us too. So it's in our best interest to actually take care of the birds and offer them the best animal welfare there is. But whether you're raising plants or animals, this idea of dominion and stewardship plays a big part of what a farmer does every day. And it is they take a lot of risk every day. Think about the guy in the Midwest. He puts seed in the ground and he waits for the good Lord to wet the ground and keep it going so that at the end of the season he can go and get a bountiful harvest. And so there's a lot of science and worry that goes into that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The final question is going to be about the price of eggs. But before we do that, folks, I got to tell you about olive oil. We learned a long time ago on this show that not all olive oil is created equally. You can go buy the book, Extra Virginity, and you'll see that in this country, and I see the good doctor over there nodding his head in agreement, we're allowed to cut olive oil up to 40% in this country and still call it 100% pure, unadulterated virgin olive oil. Well, guess what? Villa Capelli, the longest running sponsor of this show, Villa Capelli, folks, you want to get the good stuff, go get Villa Capelli. Now, good olive oil ain't cheap. So there's a couple of ways to save. Number one, you want to get that 3-liter tin, because when you buy volume, we were just talking about this with the eggs and everything else, it's economy of scale. So you can also win with economy of scale. Get the 3-liter tin. Don't go, oh, that's almost $100. It's 3 liters. That's a gallon or so of olive oil. That's what 3 liters is, folks. Get that, because that's going to last you a long time. Number two, put in promo code Vinnie, VINNIE, no wimpy Y, you'll get 10% off. So that's 2 savings, but wait, there's more. When you're at Villa Capelli's site, here's a little trick. Spend enough money so that when you put in a discount code Vinnie and you take the 10% off, you're still north of $125, and then they'll give you free shipping. And again, economy of scales. Do you know how much 3 liters of olive oil weighs? It's like 1,000 pounds. To ship that would be $1 million. So you can save $1 million. You can save an extra 10%, and you got some herbs de la Provence or whatever else you buy over there. You're set for a long time. Villa Capelli, go there. Listen, you're going to love this stuff, folks. Go check out Villa Capelli, promo code Vinnie, VINNIE. People always say to me when I do the consults, hey, man, I just thought you were saying, you mentioned Villa Capelli, and I just, they're paying you. I don't know. I finally bought some. Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a salad dressing all on its own, right? When you get the good
Yep.
stuff, right?
Yep. I love it on bread.
Yeah.
With a little Parmesan.
We don't eat bread around here. Sugar's not great. Don't listen to everything Gregory has to say.
Oh, I love it on bread. You betcha.
Yeah. But
Oh,
listen,
yeah.
I love that.
enjoy
You
life.
betcha. That's how you know he's from Pennsylvania area. You betcha.
You
Yeah.
betcha. So
that.
the other part of it too is keep it in the tin. If you're going to buy good virgin olive oil, keep it in the tin. Don't let light hit it. Keep it straight.
Yeah. It'll last forever. Listen,
Yeah.
this guy understands science. Right? He's from Penn State. Come on.
Yeah.
Joe Pa, the great coach. But we lost one of the best football players this past year. Can you believe it? I mean, and it happened right like days before the Immaculate Reception anniversary.
And I'm a Raiders fan. So a longtime Oakland Raiders fan. And yet that Immaculate Reception was quite the feat, wasn't it? Yeah.
It really was. We'll never know because Franco never said whether the ball hit the ground or not, because I don't think he actually knew.
Hey, it doesn't matter. It's a history. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Franco was as good as he was on TV. He was good out in the real world. He was as good as the day is long. You betcha.
Yeah. Real community guy. Yeah.
You couldn't ask for a better man, and he was gone in a blink of an eye, which tells us one thing, folks, is that life is short and you need to do the things you need to do. And, you'll hear me talk, you'll hear him talk, but you need to make your decisions and you need to act today because you don't know if tomorrow's going to come. So you only have today to make that day work.
Franco Harris went to bed happy that day and woke up dead. It's just the way it goes.
It's the way it is.
So the question on everyone's mind is, listen, here's the deal. I'm a guy that never looks at the price of food because I buy meat, I buy dairy products, and I buy eggs. I don't go, oh, these eggs are $4.99. Those are $3. I was like a politician, they ask, how much is a box of cereal? And they never know. I never know because I need to eat this stuff. But what I started noticing was when I get to checkout, I do the self-checkout and I'll look at my bill and it's like, Jesus Christ, I didn't buy any booze or anything. I couldn't figure it out. And as it turns out, I'm looking at eggs and they're not $3 anymore. They went to $4 and then they quickly went to $5 and they quickly went to $6. I bought eggs yesterday. I bought 3 dozen and I paid $7.89 per dozen for these eggs.
What part of the world are you in? What state are you in?
I'm in Virginia.
Okay. Wow. Because I have the egg report from the USDA and our poor friends in Southern California are paying anywhere between $6.59 and $6.70 that's the eggs coming to the retailer. That's what the retailer's buying them for. Wow. So they're going to turn around and add some more to that and charge you. So those poor guys are getting hit. So what's causing all this? And that's the big thing that I keep on hearing. There's 2 things that are happening. One is we've had avian flu for almost an entire year. We lost almost 58 million birds throughout the United States, and a lot of them were laying hens. And so our laying flock went down pretty much around 5%. And it's a supply and demand thing. So we typically export our smaller egg sizes, but with this drop in production or supply, we're eating probably every egg we are producing at this point in time. At the same time, and here's the coupling factor, is that we have inflation going on right now. 10 years ago, or even 5 years ago, gas prices were a little bit lower. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, maybe even half. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we have diesel going up as high as it is, you got to remember that everything that comes to your grocery store came on a truck. Farmer Brown just didn't walk in with an armload of carrots and said, here, It
Right.
came on a truck from a distribution center that had somebody else truck it from the farm into the distribution center.